Hey guys, I'm back with another video. Today I'm going to be making my first ever knife. I'm going to be making a bushcraft style knife out of an old file here that I have. And it's going to be a hidden tang, full tang construction kind of design. I have my designs here in my book written on paper, and I'm going to cut them out, put them onto here, and then grind this down to the blade. I'm going to be doing a little bit of forging possibly too on the blade, so we'll see how that goes. Yeah, I'm really excited. Let's get to it. Okay, so I'll show you my designs here. I just drew them out on paper, but you can see I drew a few different styles here, and I went with this one in the end. So it's going to be 7 3/4 long, the entire thing, 3.5 inch blade, 4 1/4 inch handle, and it's going to be 14/16 of an inch wide, so 7/8 wide. And I'm going to be using this old file here that I have. So one thing you need to note with files is they have to be old for you to make a knife out of them, because most new files nowadays are what's called case hardened, so it's only carbon steel on the outside of the file, not all the way through, and you want the whole thing to be carbon steel to make a well-working knife with a good edge and everything. So I just photocopied the designs out. I'm gonna cut it out, glue it onto the file, and I'm just gonna be grinding it down to the shape, general shape, with a Dremel. I don't have an angle grinder or anything. A Dremel seems to be a good all-around tool. I don't have a belt grinder or anything, so this is very minimal tool build here. We'll see how it's going to work. I got little cutting discs on the Dremel and little grinding wheels. So yeah, I'm going to cut this out and put it onto this.
I'm all suited up, respirator, ear, gear, and eyeglasses. So I have the Dremel 4300 here that I'm using. Should be powerful enough. One way to know if your file is high carbon steel is to look at the sparks that come off when you're grinding it. If they're really bushy, like the ones back here, it means it's high carbon steel. If they're more long and straight, it means it's not. So try to look for that. This is how big it was at the start, and this is how big it is now. It's ridiculous. These are like super expensive too. It's like 20 bucks for a pack of 3, so that's kind of unfortunate, but oh well, it'll be fine. Okay, so it's time to stop for tonight. I've gotten one side of the tang finished, which is the part that goes in the handle, the tang, and it's time to stop because the disc is actually breaking. You can see there it's coming off, like it's little center metal piece there, which is kind of sketchy. So you can see how small it is. It's basically gone. So here is the, move this dust out of the way. Now this is the blade part right here. And this is the hidden tang, right? So it's hidden inside the handle. I've been kind of cutting this into sections along the way and then cutting it lengthwise. It took me maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours. But yeah, I guess it's working all right. A lot of dust. Dremel's working good though. So after tomorrow, I'll cut the rest off, and then I have some grinding wheels here. You can see some of these. You know, I'll just clean up the edges with that, and then I'm going to take it over to my friend's place. Respirator marks all over my face. My friend has a forge, propane forge, an anvil and everything. I don't have that, so maybe bang on it a little bit, and I'm just, all that's gonna do is thin it out, thin the metal, and give it kind of a nice, oh, darn it. And all that will do, thin out the metal a little bit so it's not as thick. Also, I'm gonna give it a slight taper at the tip. It gets a little bit thinner as it goes up to the tip of the blade, and it'll also give it like forged look. Will look really cool. And then the last steps will be to fit the handle. I'm gonna drill with this drill press that I got for like $20, so that was good. And like shape the handle with the Dremel also. I'm doing pretty much all of this with the Dremel. Like I said, the ideal tool for this would be a belt grinder, but I do not have that, so they are very expensive. So yeah. I'm gonna continue this tomorrow, probably. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the design, like everything that I'm doing. This knife is going to have bolsters, which are basically guards. That's just, they don't overlap the actual handle like a sword does. So it's going to have bolsters on both ends of the handle. So you can see here one of my designs. I have a bolster there, a bolster here, and I'm going to be making those out of the same file here. Hopefully I can get them out of this little chunk right here. And then I'll also on either side, so in between the bolster and the wood, I bought some G10 liner material, which is basically thin, it's like fiberglass and epoxy, kinda. And that just basically gives it from some detail. So I'm going to put like bolster, black, white, and then some black walnut. It's going to look really nice. And I'm going to do that on both sides. And then I also have this 3/16 of an inch stainless steel pin. I'm going to put one pin in just to make it look nice. I would have done brass, but since the bolsters are going to be, you know, silver too, so should this. So yeah. Also, I'm going to be putting a convex grind. So the edge, like where it comes to a point, instead of being straight to the point, it's going to come kind of a little bit rounded. And all that does is it just makes it kind of a stronger edge for more chopping. I don't really care about that. It's just that'll be a little bit easier to grind the bevels. It's another word for the kind of edges, bevels with a Dremel, because I'll be using the same grinding wheel, and I'll just be going along the blade, just kind of carving an edge into it. And it'll be a lot easier to do a convex grind rather than a Scandinavian grind. So, yeah, I think that's pretty much my entire design. Okay, so I've done the other half, but check out how small it is. It's gone. Like, that can't be used anymore. There's maybe 2 more millimeters of space on there. But I've done the other half here. I'm gonna put a bigger wheel on and get this chunk off. It's a bit wonky, but oh well. I'll get the grinding wheel on there. I set up the shop vac here too. Just kind of taped it there. Wasn't working very well though. But yeah, I'm gonna probably start this again tomorrow. One process.
Okay, so since this file has been really hard to cut with the Dremel cutting wheels, I'm actually going to anneal it in the fire. So annealing is basically just taking a hardened steel and reducing its hardness level to like the complete minimum. So all I'm gonna do is I have a fire ready here that I'm gonna light, and I'm just gonna put this in and basically just let it cook for at least an hour, I think would do it. And then that'll just soften it and make it a lot easier to cut and file down and everything, because you can imagine if you took a file to another file, it would just destroy both files. So that's kind of what's happening right now. So I'm gonna do that. Of course, you'd probably want to do this at the start before you start cutting this, but I kind of overlooked that, didn't think I would have to, but apparently I do. So I'm gonna go ahead and light this fire, let it burn for a while, get some nice coals, then put it in and just let it cook. So, yeah. Okay, so it's extremely wet outside and the fire is not going so well, so I'm just gonna put it in. I put this kind of cement brick down in here just to keep it flat so it doesn't warp too much. And I'm just gonna set this in here. Cover it with a bunch of kindling here. Put a few pieces on top. And leave it to roast. Alright, so I just want to take a second to talk about steel. Okay, so this original clip is very long, so I'm just going to go back here and talk to you a little bit more briefly about steel. So if you're just getting into knife making, you're making your first knife, there's a lot of great options steel-wise that you can make a good knife out of without having to spend any money whatsoever. So files are definitely a great option. You have to make sure that you get an old one, so it's not case hardened though. And they do tend to be quite brittle, so if you are making a knife out of it, I suggest heat treating it yourself. Heat treating is just hardening it. So heat treat it yourself so it is less brittle. Also, circular saw and miter saw blades are also a very good option. They're never case hardened that I know of. They do tend to be a bit thinner, so if you want to make a thinner knife or anything, great option as well. Also, leaf springs from trucks are also a great option. They have a really good toughness, good carbon content. So also they're good thickness for a knife. So those are three really good options for high carbon steel knives. Now, if you do want to purchase steel, it will definitely be more consistent. There's some great websites out there to buy that. I suggest, if you're in Canada, knifemaker.ca is really great. That's where I got my G10 liners for this knife. They have everything, handle material, metal, hardware, everything. If you're in US Knife Maker is a great website. They have everything that you could ever dream of. So those are two great places to get steel for knife making. If you do that, I recommend getting 1080 or 1084 high carbon steel, because it's the easiest to heat treat yourself. So there we go. Steel. Alright, so it's the next day. I got my file out of the thing, put a new template glued on, just photocopied another one, glued it back on. So with the annealing process, what you want to do is you want to leave it in the fire, like get a nice hot fire, put it in the fire on something flat. So I put a brick in there so it lay flat so it wouldn't warp too much. It did warp a tiny bit at the end, but now it's soft enough that I can just clamp it in the vise and leave it there for a while, and it'll just straighten back up, hopefully. And so what you want to do is you want to put it in the nice hot fire, leave it there for around an hour. I think I left it there for around an hour, and just let it cool. So don't put the fire out, don't take it out of the fire, leave it in the fire until the fire's completely out, and that this is cool enough that you can just grab it out of the fire. Because if you take it out of the fire too early and cool it too quickly, then it will go right back to the hardening thing. So that's what you do with heat treating, is you take it out of the heat and you dunk it in whatever to cool it down really quickly. So basically what it is right now it's really hard, right? Because it's a file, it's meant to cut other pieces of metal. So it's really hard, and when you heat it up to critical temperature, which is non-magnetic, red hot, the molecules will spread apart, and then cooling it slowly will just let them settle there apart so that it's soft enough to cut and file down and everything. And then once you're done all that, you're going to heat it back up again to critical temperature, and you're going to dunk it. This one I'm probably going to dunk in vegetable oil or canola oil or something like that. And you're going to dunk it real quick, and these are just going to lock back together and stay that way. So yeah, that's basically what it is. So yeah, it's soft enough now to cut, hopefully. And I have this angle grinder that we borrowed from our neighbors. So I'm gonna, just to do the heavy work because the Dremel just kind of annoying. So I'm gonna cut it here, cut a few pieces off, probably finish it off with the Dremel, grind it down a little bit. It's scary, it's scary, so yeah, should be good. I'm pretty much done with the angle grinder, I think. You can see here. I got it pretty close to the lines. It's looking really good. Starting to look like a knife now. It's smoking hot. I can barely touch it. But yeah, it's a pretty good size here. So I'm gonna do the rest of the grinding work, smoothing it out here, all the edges, all the handle with the grinding wheel on the Dremel, just because it's very easy to mess up with the angle grinder. Okay, so it's been quite a while since we have last worked on the knife. The plan initially was to forge it at my buddy Ari's place, because he's got all the equipment, the forge, the anvil, everything. But now it's winter, and everybody's really busy with school and doing lots of skiing and stuff. So I am going to attempt it by myself, with no tools. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to be lighting a fire in a normal fire pit. It doesn't really matter, just getting it down to some really nice coals. And all the equipment I'm going to need is a heat gun or a hair dryer to get the air flowing so it heats up faster. A forging hammer, which I just picked up today for around 30 bucks. A pair of pliers, the longest ones you can get, and your knife. So I'm gonna light this up, and we're going to attempt to forge it on a stump instead of an anvil. So we're gonna see how that goes. Okay, this fire sucks, but I am going to put it in anyway. It's not gonna seem to go to coals, but yeah, there we go. Okay, so what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to, because the steel is really thick right now, the file's quite thick, so I'm trying to take from the belly of the blade, so where it starts at the handle, and it's going to get slowly thinner towards the tip, and it's called tapering it. So I'm going to attempt to taper it a little bit, and in that process it's going to thin out the steel and also hopefully drag it out a little bit and make it a little bit longer. I might gain a 1/4 inch, maybe 1/2 inch or so on there. So that is what we are attempting to do. You want to get the steel red hot, preferably. So you just plop her in there. You preferably want to have lots of coals. But this wood does not seem to want to do that right now, so that's kind of annoying. I'm just plopping it in there, turning the heat gun on, getting some flames, getting it nice and hot.
So I have never actually done this before. I've never forged before. This is a first for me. I did put my respirator on because it was burning the wood here. I don't know if it's working that well. I saw it in the video. It seemed to work. It is burning it a lot. It cools down really fast. I didn't realize how fast the metal cools down. It's crazy. Let me go ahead and pull it out. Yeah, it's already cooling down. So yeah, I'm just dragging the metal out. Yeah, it cools down really fast. Okay, so I tried using the cinder block here, but it cracked pretty easily. But it definitely works better, so I'm going to use it at the end here just to flatten everything out. Okay, we are good. Okay, so it's the next day. The knife here, you can see, we've tapered it down in thickness to the tip. I don't know if you can see there. The stump, I mean, it worked okay. Of course, it would have been a lot better with an anvil because it's soft, the stump. A lot of the force from the hits just gets absorbed into the stub and then the ground. Whereas if you had a harder surface, then it would more go, the pressure, the force of the hit would go into the metal more. It definitely did work though. I'm going to work on profiling the blade now a little bit more, and then we're going to grind the bevels. So this is a little stand that I made for the Dremel with the sanding thing on top. Spins around here, kind of like a drum sander. And then a knife here, so I have a table that I can grind along here. I'm just going to profile this so it's a little more straight. And yeah.
Okay, so now I'm going to put the bevel line here, so where I'm going to grind up to, so how high the blade will go. And I think we're going to go across here about this high and up to there, and then we'll go down here for the plunge line. Okay, and another thing we're going to do is on the cutting edge here, I'm going to color all of this in so you know the exact middle of the blade, so each side comes to the exact middle. And then to get the exact center of this, we're going to take a drill bit, roughly the same thickness as the widest part of your steel here, because this one's tapered right at the belly here. And then you're just going to drag it along the middle. Make a nice line there. Just like that. And then flip it over and do it again. And you'll get the middle there.
Okay, so I got this new angle grinder for Christmas. And I think it's going to work a lot better than just the Dremel. You could definitely do it with the Dremel, with sanding wheel and grinding wheel on it, but it's going to take a very long time. So this is definitely going to be faster. I've got a 1/4-inch grinding disc on here, and we're just going to go on here and just work it back and forth. And then we're going to put a flap wheel on. I'm not sure where it is right now. We're going to put a flap wheel on and finish it off with that. Do both sides. Should be good. Okay, so I'm going to put a flap wheel on the angle grinder now. It's just a bunch of pieces of sandpaper stuck together called a flap wheel. So I'm going to slap that on the angle grinder and just clean up all the edges. I left about a millimeter or so still on the edge. So we're going to clean that up with the flap wheel, get all the lines out. This is a 60 grit That's probably all I'm going to need. And then I'm going to finish it up with a file and some sandpaper. And it should be good.
Okay, so I'm finished grinding. Here's the knife. Doesn't look half bad. I got both sides done there. I did some file work on the spine. It's pretty good. So this is a convex grind. So a grind is the edge basically. And convex grind is when the tip, when it goes to the edge, it's kind of more rounded like this, whereas like a Scandinavian grind is like this, or hollow grind where it's like indented a little bit. So this is a Scandinavian or a convex grind, which is a bit rounded to the tip. So this way, rounded to the tip, you know. So that just adds a little bit more strength, and it's way easier to grind with an angle grinder, just back and forth. If you had a belt grinder, this process would be a lot easier. Just belt grinder, so it looks pretty good. It's all roughed up right now. I was just using the file, so I'm gonna sand that down to probably around 600 grit. I was kind of hoping for the dark spot here to come down a little bit further, but the grinder is very unpredictable, so I grinded too much away there. It still looks fine. Yeah, so the next steps will be to sand this down nice and shiny looking, and then we're going to file the sharpening choil here, so a little notch out there so it's easier to sharpen.
There is a 800 grit finish. I'm not sure if you can see that. This is what it was before. This is what it is. This side done. So it looks pretty good. I'm going to do this side now. Okay, I just cut myself while hand sanding. So I'm going to bring this inside and dry it off nice and good so it doesn't rust. And we'll probably do the heat treatment next.
I forgot to make my sharpening choil. So, sharpening choil. It's just a little notch out of the base of the blade to make it easier to sharpen. Usually you'd use a chainsaw file, but I don't have that, so I'm just using a small triangular file. Give it a different kind of look. There we go, just a little notch out of there. Yupperoo. Okay, so I've realized a few things. We have a few more things to do before we can do the heat treatment on the blade. So what I have to do right now is cut a block of wood. I got this piece of really nice black walnut just from a local wood supply shop. And we're going to cut a block for that and drill a hole down the middle, and the way we're going to get a perfect fit around the tang, because we're going to be sliding the handle onto the tang, is to heat this up and burn a hole into the piece of wood, and then we'll get a perfect fit. So if we do that after heat treatment, the tang won't be hardened. It doesn't really matter if the tang's not hardened, but I'd like it to be hardened at least up to like here or so, and we're going to be heating the entire length of the tang to get it all the way through. So I'm going to do that before we do the heat treatment. So right now I'm just going to clean up all the sides here with the Dremel, so it's all nice and flush, so there's no gaps when we burn the hole. Okay, I cut a really nice piece of black walnut here. I'm going to drill a little bit higher in the middle, and I'm going to put a hole through it a little bit smaller than the actual size of the tang, and then we're going to burn it on to make a perfect fit. So hopefully this works. It's not plugged in. Okay. Okay, so the way I'm going to do this is I drilled my hole in my piece of wood there, and I'm going to take the torch, heat this up so that it's really hot. I'm going to take this and burn it on, so it's going to be a really nice, tight, snug fit. So yeah, here we go. There we go. This may take a while. Okay, I got it to fit, burned it all the way through. It took about 6 separate heating up edges, but it fits perfectly now, all the way to the end, pretty snugly, really snug actually. Yeah, it's perfect. Okay, so I have 2 pieces of G10 here. G10 is a knife making material. These are called liners, and they're just decorative. And I'm going to put these in between the bolsters and the wood. So I'm going to cut some pieces off them, glue them together today before we glue up the handle, and that'll just make life easier when we do the final glue up and everything. So I'm going to cut those out and glue them together. Okay, I'm just gonna glue these together with Gorilla Super Glue. Should work. Should be good. It's really, really sticky stuff. Oh. Okay, so the plan initially was I'm gonna make the bolsters now. So I thought that I could heat treat the knife first, but I realized that I had to drill a hole in it for the pin before I harden it. So in order to drill the hole, I have to get all the measurements of the handle right, and then so I have to do the bolsters first, the guard and the pommel. So I'm going to use this file. It's nice and thick. The plan initially was to use the piece that I cut off from the file that I used from the knife, so you can make this entire knife just with one file. But I lost that piece. I could not find it anymore, so I'm just going to use a scrap piece of steel here from another file. But it's really hard, so I have to anneal it in the fireplace. So yeah, that's what I'm doing now. Just gonna go ahead, got really nice coals. Just plop her in there. Get the fire all around it here. Alright, we've got the file here all annealed, ready to go. I'm going to take the angle grinder to it, kind of polish it up, take the file teeth off there so it's nice and smooth, and then we're going to draw our designs on and cut it out. Okay, we got our designs down there, mostly. Looks pretty good. Alrighty, so I've got the two squares, my two bolsters cut there, and where I'm going to drill there in the middle. So I'm going to take it to the drill press. I'm going to drill a hole in the middle, two holes, and then I'm going to file it out. So for drilling holes, I have a special bit. This is black oxide drill bit, so it's meant for metal. And you want it to have on a slow speed on your drill press. So you can definitely do this with just a normal drill, but I have a drill press, so I'm going to use it. There we go. Now I'm going to carve out the middle there with a grinding bit on the Dremel.
is not supposed to happen. Huh. Well, that's a bummer. Okay.
Alright, I did it. It was a lot of file work. My hand is like, oh man. So I got the front one here. Slides on, got a perfect fit. I do have to do some filing on the knife itself because it doesn't sit exactly flat. And then we got the pommel end here. Goes right in the end. I think that's the way it goes. Yeah. So there we go, and then the handle in between. So actually it's a bit long, the handle, a bit longer than I want it to be, because I cut the tang longer at the beginning, because I'm going to cut a little bit off there at the end. So right now I'm going to measure all of these pieces together so that they are 4 inches, and if it's over, I'm going to cut this piece of wood down so that it makes it 4 inches. And then we're going to assemble it all, drill the hole through, take it all apart, then heat treat it, then assemble it all back together, do the glue up, and then do the handle shaping, and it should be good. So yeah, I'm going to do some file work on the knife now. Beautiful. It's right on. There we go. I've got it all cut to size, so this is the final size of the knife. After glue up, I'll cut this off and sand it all down. So yeah, that's what it looks like. Pretty cool.
Okay, there we go. Hit the metal. So I'm going to take it out and see if it's in line. Okay, yeah. I got the hole right there. It looks pretty much in the center. So I think I'm going to put it back in and do it again like that.
Okay, the hole is very clean there. Moment of truth. I've got a 3/16 stainless steel pin here. Does it go through? Oh, it goes through beautifully. Look at that. Oh, yes. I'm so happy. Oh, if that didn't work, that would just messed up the entire handle. Okay, here, let's pull this all apart. See what we got. Oh, it's beautiful right in the middle, too. And of course, this does make the rest of the tang weaker. I'm not really worried about this. I'm not going to be like throwing this at giant rocks or something, so This is just a little kind of bushcrafty carving knife, so I'm not really worried about that. So yeah, it's really clean. I'm going to countersink this with a countersink bit and drill press. That's not really necessary, but it just makes it a lot cleaner, so in the glue up it'll go through. And then another thing to do with the angle grinder is I'm going to cut some notches in here, just a few notches along the edge, so when we do the final glue up, the epoxy will have something to hold to. There'll be a lot more grip inside there. But yeah, I'm really happy with that. I'm gonna go ahead and countersink this. Okay, I did find a chainsaw file, so I'm gonna use that to fix the sharpening choil and make it half round.
Okay, so right now I'm going to make some nicks and marks along the side of the spine here, so the epoxy has something to grip to.
Okay, so let's talk about the heat treatment process. So heat treating is basically, so if you remember at the beginning, I annealed the file to make the knife. So annealing is just bringing the hardness level way down so that I can cut it easier. So files come very hard because they're meant to cut other pieces of metal. So you have to anneal that first, and then in order to make it a knife at the end, so it holds a good edge and is fairly tough, you have to heat treat it. So there's basically, there's three steps to heat treating. So the first one is normalizing, which is basically calming down all the grain. Because if you think of steel as kind of like sand, there's a whole bunch of grains in there. And when you're profiling it, grinding, drilling, cooling it down, it deforms all the grains, so it's all weird and mixed up. So normalizing is just, I'm going to put it in the fire, bring it to critical temperature, then take it out and let it air cool, so it's cool to the touch. And you're going to do that 3 times. So that basically just calms the steel down, so it's all kind of in line. Then the next step is probably the hardest part of this whole knife making, thing. So it's quenching. So you're going to put it back in the fire and bring it up to critical temperature, which is non-magnetic. So to know when you have the right temperature of steel, you take a magnet on a stick and just tap it all along the edge, and if it doesn't stick, you're pretty much ready to go. You put it back in the fire for another minute or so, and then you take it out and dunk it in canola oil as fast as you can. Doesn't have to be canola oil, it can be vegetable oil, but I'm doing canola oil. It's fairly cheap and works the best. So after you quench it, kind of stir it around so that it cools really fast, and that is just basically when it gets hot, all the molecules and everything are kind of lingering around, moving around, and then when you just dunk it super quick in the oil and it cools it down extremely fast, all the molecules kind of lock together, and that makes it really hard. But at that point, it is insanely hard, so if you were to drop it on the floor, it would probably crack and shatter. So that brings us to the third step, which is tempering. So tempering, you're going to put it in your home oven, or I'm going to use a toaster oven, and you put it in at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for 2 2-hour cycles. And in between the 2 cycles, you take it out and let it cool to the touch. And that is just bringing the hardness level down a tiny bit so that it still holds a really good edge, but it's also very durable. So if you were to drop it or hit it against a piece of wood, batoning or something, it's not just going to break. So that is the heat treatment process, actually making a knife, and that's what we're going to be doing right now. I'm going to be using just the wood stove that we have here to heat it up. You can do this outside. It's probably recommended to do it outside actually, but the wood stove here heats up a lot faster, so I'm going to be using that. And then I'm going to run outside with the steel and have the oil outside ready to go. You want to have your oil outside because it will smoke a lot, and there will be a little bit of flames too. It'll flare up a little bit right when you dunk it in at the surface. So yeah, don't burn your house down, don't kill yourself, don't burn yourself. Let's do it. So this here is the canola oil, and I'm pouring it into a metal container here. Is it just a tin olive oil container? You want it to be metal because the oil is going to get fairly hot when you dunk the metal in it. So make sure you have a metal container. Okay, so I'm on the final tempering cycle there. It's cooling there, so I'm going to put this scrap piece of steel, pop her in there, and then when it gets really hot, I'm going to dunk it in the oil to preheat my oil. And that's just, when you heat it up, pure oil, it makes it thinner, and when it's thin, it cools down the steel faster. It's kind of weird, but that's how it works, so that's what I'm going to do. Okay, so I want to preheat my oil to around 120 degrees Fahrenheit. And it's definitely not there, so I'm going to have to do that again. Okay, I'm going to do it one more time. Nice. Okay. We have it at 120 degrees. It's dropping very rapidly though. Okay, so right now I'm just testing the steel for see if it's magnetic. And when it's not magnetic all the way along, it means it's ready to quench. I'll put it in for a couple more minutes, and then we're going to quench it. So non-magnetic is around 14 50 Fahrenheit. So yeah.
Okay, ready? Go. At this point, you can check for warping. You have like a minute or so to straighten it out here, and then put it back in to cool it the rest of the way.
Okay, so I've cooled it to room temperature. I'll wipe off all the oil here. And the test is to take a file to it and, oh yeah. Yeah, so this file's just skating over the edge like it's glass, kind of. You can hear the sound too. So I've got a good quench all along the edge. And now we're gonna move on to the tempering cycles. Okay, so we're on the tempering process now. The final step. So we're gonna preheat this to 400 Fahrenheit. Let it preheat, put it in there for 2 hours, take it out, let it cool to room temperature, then put it back in for another 2 hours at 400. Okay, so I'm just ended up doing it in the big kitchen oven here, just because I don't really know how the toaster oven works. We've never really used it before, so I'm just gonna not mess it up and do it in the one that I actually know how it works. Okay, so I finished the last tempering cycle. I've got the knife here. It's all done. So that finished the whole heat treating step. It was definitely probably the hardest part yet. Really got my heart going there with the quench. There's many mistakes that could have been made, but it all turned out good. So I didn't go too in-depth with this. There's lots of videos out there on YouTube going right into the science of heat treatment and everything. It's really very interesting. If you want to see more of those videos, I recommend going to looking at Outdoors 55. He has a couple of really good videos all about heat treating, so go check those out. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to cut the bolsters down, sand the blade, glue up the handle, and shape the handle, and we're all done. So it's going well. There we go, that's up to about a 600 grit finish.
Okay, I'm gonna cut up the bolsters here into their final shape before the glue up. It would be a lot more difficult if you did it after glue up, so I'm gonna do that beforehand. With the angle grinder, cut the rough shape, grind, and then use the Dremel to kind of sand nicely. Okay, these are looking pretty good. I've got my Dremel on the table thingy, and I'm just gonna clean these up.
Okay, so I've got this one up to 600 grit finish again there, same as the blade. Looks really nice. You don't have to sand this side because that's gonna go up against the wood. Looks really good actually. This one, the pommel bolster, I didn't go all the way. This is to like 320, I think, because I'll be this sticks out a little bit, so after I glue it up, I'll have to cut this off and then sand the whole thing like this. But yeah, they both look very good. Okay, so I've got all my pieces. We're gonna glue it up now. I have some 2-part epoxy here. I'm just using the LePage epoxy steel. Doesn't really matter what you use. Gorilla glue would work good too. I'm gonna mix this up, glue all the parts together, and I don't have a clamp as long as the knife. So I'm improvising and using the drill press. I'm gonna clamp the knife kind of in here like this and tighten this up here as an improvised clamp, so it should work. We'll see. Yeah, I'm gonna start mixing up the epoxy. Well, that's interesting. Okay, change of plan. For some reason, this epoxy has gone bad. So I went and grabbed some different epoxy. So now I got Gorilla. So we're gonna use that. Okay, so I've got it all clamped up here. It worked pretty well. It was 5-minute epoxy though, so it was cured very quickly. I'm gonna let this sit for 24 hours. Come back tomorrow, take it all out of the clamp, and start shaping up the handle. So you want to make sure at the top bolster here that you clean it off, all in the crack in between the blade and the bolster. Get all the epoxy, as much epoxy off as you can, because once this is all together, it's going to be pretty hard to kind of sand in there. So yeah, looks good though. Okay, so it's been a couple days. The knife, it looks really well. I've taken it out of the drill press. So the reason why I did it inside, when you're gluing it up with the epoxy, you want the epoxy to cure at around room temperature, kind of in the warmth. If it cools, like out here, it's fairly cold in the garage. So if it cures in the cold, it'll be quite brittle. So you don't want that. So I just brought it inside to do that. It looks really good. We've got squeeze out all the way around all the edges. There's one thing, I don't know if you can see, there is a tiny bit of a gap in between the bolster and the liners there. I'm gonna kind of cut this down to size with a handsaw, and if I can see it more, I might just fill it in with some epoxy again and let it dry. But yeah, so that's what we're gonna do right now. We're going to kind of do the rough handle shaping with a saw. I've got a hacksaw over there too to get through the pins and stuff. Kind of cut it down to the rough shapes, cut the corners off, and then we're going to use the Dremel to kind of smooth it down a little bit, and then some rasps and sandpaper to get the final shape. So let's do it.
Alright, here's where we're at. I glued a piece of the design here from a handle on. It's looking pretty good until this happened. I cut way too deep in with the saw on the handle here. I wanted to have more of kind of a palm swell, actually, right where your kind of arch of your hand would be. But yeah, hopefully I can fix that. It's looking pretty good though. Kind of got the rough profile. I made some of these here. It's just wooden dowel. I drilled two metal pegs in there, and I glued some sandpaper on to pop these in the drill press, and I'll use that kind of profile the handle, as well as using the Dremel. Hopefully that will work.
Alright, this is where we're at. It's looking pretty decent actually, other than the little dip here. I'm going to leave it at that tonight and continue tomorrow.
Oh, he's on. No, he's on.
Okay, there we go. I finished my final sanding job. This is up to 400 grit. I wanted to leave the bolsters a little bit gritty. I just thought it looked kind of cool. So there we go. That's my final sanding. It feels really good. This finger notch here in the front is a little deeper than I wanted it to be, but oh well, it's my first knife. So I'm going to sharpen this up, and then we're going to do the final oiling. Okay, I've got some boiled linseed oil here. We're going to oil up the handle here. Beautiful. That black walnut there against the white and black and then white again. Wow. Okay guys, thanks so much for watching. It was a really great video. Really enjoyed making this, turned out really good. I'm super happy with it. Seemed to work pretty well in the field as well. So, thanks so much for watching. Huge thanks to my Uncle Bruce for sending me this welding apron and gloves. Super useful. Thank you. And thank you to my Uncle Rod for sending me these 3 knives for my knife collection. Super cool blades. Thanks so much, guys. If you'd like to see more videos like this, I'm hoping to do more bushcraft videos and kind of making the tools that I do the bushcraft with in the future. If you like this video, click subscribe, and if you have any questions, leave one in the comments below. I hope to make a leather sheath for this in the future, so keep an eye out for that video, and we'll see you on the next one.